There are legends of the deep. Ancient and elusive, they are the keepers of balance in our oceans. Hammer. Angel. Great white. Tiger. Manta. Refined over millions of years, their powers are unique. They are super sharks. Together, they ensure the stability of our world's life support. The oceans. Our oceans need super sharks. We need them, and they need our help. Assemble the super sharks and help them save our seas.
Sharks and rays. They are ancient, enigmatic, misunderstood, and essential to our oceans. But these important animals are under immense pressure. As the Save Our Seas Foundation, we're here to help. Through supporting research, conservation, and education, we work to ensure a future for sharks and rays. The Save Our Seas Foundation. Together, we can make a difference.
Okay, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of the Save Our Seas Foundation Distinguished Speaker Series, coming at you live from the Museum of Discovery and Science in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. My name is Gabby, and I am the Environmental Sustainability Manager here at the museum. The museum is honored to host the Save Our Seas Speaker Series, as it is one of the most dynamic ways to connect people to inspiring science. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. Perfect. So, like I said, we are just so excited to host the Save Our Seas Speaker Series here at the museum. Our entire mission here at the museum is to connect people to inspiring science. And we do that by providing experiential pathways to lifelong learning for children and adults through exhibits, programs, and films. The museum is able to fulfill its mission by delivering creative content and programming through our four major content pillars: environmental sustainability, which we'll be talking about tonight, physical science education, early childhood education, and of course, health and wellness education. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Save Our Seas for helping us put on this incredible speaker series. It is because of them that we are able to connect you to leading research in ocean conservation. And to those of you returning, welcome back. For those of you, if it's your first time here, welcome. I know usually Lance is hosting these conversations, but I'm filling in tonight. And let me just say that I am so excited to have you here for tonight's presentation. And I want to wish everybody here a happy International Whale Shark Day. Before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to remind everyone that we'll be having a Q&A session with our speakers at the end of the presentation. But if you have any questions while they are speaking, please feel free to put them in the chat. As the conversation continues, I'll make sure to stop our speakers and ask, as we really want this to be more of a discussion and less of a presentation. So, while our presenters are speaking, we do just ask that you please keep yourselves muted. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for tonight. Tonight, we are joined by Sofía and Jonathan Green from the Galapagos Whale Shark Project. Sofía Green is a conservation biologist from Ecuador. The Galapagos has always been a part of her life. Thus, after graduating with a bachelor's degree in biology, she moved to the Galapagos Islands to work towards their conservation. How exciting. She has been working in the Galapagos Islands since 2017 as part of the Galapagos Whale Shark Project. Sofía recently graduated with an international master's degree in marine biological resources with a focus on conservation and ecology, and continues to work with the GWSP as a research assistant and data analysis. Besides her work with whale sharks, Sofía is involved in leading volunteer environmental education programs in the Galapagos. She runs coastal cleanups and activities with the Sustainable Ocean Alliance and Mingas por el Mar, which stands for Community Work for Our Oceans. She also uses wildlife photography to share the beauty of this world through images alongside impacting stories. Joining Sofía tonight is her father, Jonathan. Jonathan graduated with a BSc Combination Sciences from the University of North London in 1984. He's lived in France and Spain before moving to the Galapagos Islands in 1988, where he worked as a naturalist and dive master with the Galapagos National Park. In 2005, he founded the Galapagos Whale Shark Project in order to study the natural history of this little-known endangered gentle giant. The project's work was highlighted by the BBC Blue Planet 2 series. Jonathan has traveled extensively and worked as an expedition leader in both polar regions, the Amazon, High Andes, Patagonia, and throughout Central and South America. He led the 2009 Pelagic Australis dive expedition, which was led to explore parts of the underwater world of Antarctica. Wow, fascinating. He is an award-winning photographer, author of 2 photography books on the Galapagos Islands, numerous science articles, and papers. He is an elected fellow of the Royal Geographical Society, and he has 3 children, and he currently resides in Costa Rica. Welcome, Sofía and Jonathan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting us this evening.
Wonderful. Well, we're just so excited to have you. So, Sofía, if you'd like to, please go ahead and start your slides.
Can you all see my screen now?
I can see it.
I can see it, yes.
It was good.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. Well, Gabby, as you just said, this is an interactive evening, and we have a little presentation, but we're very happy to field any questions as we move through this. And we will, of course, have a little bit of time afterwards to follow up as well with any questions that you might have. Thank you to everyone that's joining us this evening. Some of you may have already heard about the Galapagos Whale Shark Project. You might have been to one of our webinars and Zooms last year, for example, through the museum. So you may already know a little bit, but we'd like to bring you up to speed a little bit to date with some of the latest work we've done. However, before that, I would like to give a little bit of history for those of you who've not perhaps joined us or haven't heard of the project before. As Gabby mentioned, in the late 1980s, I began to work in the Galapagos Islands. I was fortunate enough to work as a diver, and although we didn't know it at the time, we had a lot of whale sharks in the Galapagos Islands. My first encounter was, for me, I think, a pivotal moment. So for anyone out there who's swum, snorkeled, or seen a whale shark, you'll understand exactly why. These incredible creatures, the encounter I had was just watching a huge whale shark swim by. So I went back to Puerto Llura and began to ask some of the scientists that were there, any colleagues that I could, or any scientists that I could access. So what are the whale sharks doing here? Where are they going? Where do they breed? Where do the young live? All of these questions. And the answer was always, well, we don't know. And so because of that, I became curious. And I asked a group of dive master friends if they would help me in starting to collect basic data. Very quickly, though, after maybe a few seasons, we realized that we had to bring it up to another level. We needed to use the available technology. We needed to look more on a regional basis, not just in the Galapagos. So what they're doing in Galapagos might be one thing, but we need to understand how they're moving around the oceans if we're going to be able to help them preserve them for the future. And so because of that, in 2005, I joined forces with a scientist who was working in Galapagos, Alex Hearn, and we began to study them. It took us a few years to find the funding necessary, but when we did so in 2010, we began the program that continues today with satellite tagging. We've added a number of components to that, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. For many people, Galapagos, however, is not really represented by a whale shark. And if you ask people, okay, so have you been to Galapagos? Would you go to Galapagos? What do you think? What do you associate with? And it's giant tortoises, it's volcanic landscapes, it's Charles Darwin, it's the theory of evolution, and many, many things. But few people really think about what is down below under the surface of the oceans. Charles Darwin did refer a little bit to that, but of course he didn't have the ability that we have today to explore in the same manner. But he was certainly fascinated and understood that the oceans held a great resource as well as the land. But this is the typical image that everybody has. However, for us, I'd like to take you now to what is a typical encounter with a whale shark underwater. We're swimming or just floating off the shelf of Darwin Arch, and all of a sudden a huge shadow appears out of nowhere. And it's incredible how an animal of this size can literally just do that. They appear out of nowhere. Their camouflage is superb. This is the world's largest shark to ever exist, bigger than Megalodon. I know a lot of people doubt that, but it is. It's bigger than Megalodon. It's the biggest fish to ever exist. It's absolutely huge, and it's just a gentle giant. It's a filter feeder. It's completely inoffensive. It's not dangerous to us or anybody. No human has ever been harmed while swimming with whale sharks, and it's one of the most exciting and beautiful things that you can possibly do. So I recommend, if you've been thinking about snorkeling or diving or swimming with whale sharks, please do go ahead and grab the opportunity. It will change your lives forever. So one of the questions that we also get asked, I think most frequently as well, is this a mammal? Is this a whale? Or is this a fish? Is it a shark? And the whale part of it, the whale shark, refers only to size. So these are huge, huge animals, whale-like or whale in size, but they're not mammals. These are fish. These are sharks. They're cartilaginous fish. And as I mentioned already, it's the largest fish to ever exist and the largest shark to ever swim the oceans. So I think that sort of clears that mystery up. As I say, it's a common question. Why study whale sharks is perhaps the second question we get. Why don't you just leave them be in the oceans? They'd be quite happy. They've been roaming around for 70 million years or 80 million years. However, unfortunately, mainly due to anthropogenic influences, effects, in other words, human activity, they're now endangered. In 2016, they were downgraded and they're now considered endangered, in danger of extinction. This may, of course, be a conservative estimation because we don't know exactly what's happening and how many there are down there underneath the or in the oceans. However, they face a large number of challenges at this time. And I know that Sofía is going to tell us more about that.
So what is happening to the whale shark? Why was it downgraded from vulnerable to endangered? You see, in the past 75 years, which is only a human lifetime, we've lost over 50% of the whale sharks in the oceans. Now, as my dad mentioned, this is not really due to natural threats. This is due to a plethora of anthropogenic threats. And here we have a list, and we're going to go through them, of everything that's affecting the whale sharks in the oceans and causing their populations to decline. You see, whale sharks are actually a protected species, and I apologize for the graphic images. They are a protected species worldwide. It's illegal to fish them, illegal to catch them, illegal to trade. However, unfortunately, targeted fisheries still exist. And we see here how they are being caught for their fins, they're being caught for their liver oil, which is very valuable. So it's still occurring. We don't have to go halfway across the world, because a lot of times people attribute this only to the Asian fisheries. However, here, right off the coast of where we're working in mainland Ecuador, this very year, we kept receiving sightings like this one of stranded whale sharks, of a fisherman that caught them accidentally. Most of these catches in the coast of Ecuador may be due to bycatch. However, a lot of times if they're caught through bycatch, sometimes some people might take the opportunity to then take the fins and the liver oil. And sometimes, even though they may want to give the whale shark back into the ocean, it is impossible to do so because they've been harmed already by being taken out. And here we see, only a couple of days after that first report of that whale shark that was taken out to land and did not make it, unfortunately, we received 2 more, and then a month, 1 more, of a whale shark stranding and a whale shark being caught on a boat. And unfortunately, this is something that we're seeing constantly. Only a few years back, 3 of the 8 whale sharks that we tagged appeared on land, showing us that the rate between the overlap of fisheries and whale sharks roaming in the Eastern Tropical Pacific is extremely high. So we have to do something about this. Here you can see this whale shark stranded off the side of Colombia, on mainland Colombia. And unfortunately, at the end of the video, you can actually see that it has a puncture in the side, mainly showing that they probably took the liver for its oil. You see the oil we use in makeup and other things, as I'll mention in a little bit. But then we have another huge problem. We have vessel strikes. You see, the whale shark is one of the deepest diving fish in the world. It can reach about 1,928 meters. That's the deepest depth recorded. However, we believe that they can actually go deeper. That's just a technological limitation that we know. However, even though they can dive this deep, they spend over 50% of their lifetime between 0 and 20 meters. So they spend most of their lifetime in very, very shallow waters. And this increments the risk of them being hit by large vessels. And every single day we see marine traffic increasing. So we now know, looking at the overlap between their movements and vessel movements, that 92% of their horizontal space and 50% of their vertical space overlaps. And you can see here in this image of this whale shark how it's missing an entire chunk of its head, probably due to a propeller strike. Luckily, this whale shark survived, but how many will we never be able to quantify, because when a whale shark dies, it sinks to the bottom of the ocean and we won't be able to see what happened to it or what caused its demise. Then we have another huge problem. You may have heard about the problem of microplastics, the plastics in the ocean, about these, you might have heard about these huge plastic islands that you can see in the ocean. And most of these are actually made up of tiny, tiny particles of microplastics. As a filter feeding species, whale sharks are incredibly susceptible to feeding on the plastics as well. You see, when they take in huge gulps of water, they are not able to select between zooplankton and coral eggs, fish eggs, which is their natural diet, and the little tiny particles of plastics. We have a report even saying that a single straw ingested by a whale shark hardened in the gut of the whale shark and led to its demise. So you can imagine just how much this can be affecting the species. And not only that, but we have a huge problem with ghost nets. And here you see an example of a whale shark that was swimming past Darwin Island 2 years ago. And as it was doing so, the divers here, specifically my dad, manages to see this whale shark with this huge net trapped around its pectoral fin, and it was actually starting to cut into the fin of the whale shark. Probably would have caused it to lose its fin if it hadn't been for the fact that, thankfully, with a knife, he's able to cut through this and starts pulling it off. You see how it's actually like bleeding on the side already. And my dad says this net was so incredibly heavy that even though he wanted to take it back to the surface of the ocean, unfortunately, he had to release it because of the tons of barnacles that had started to grow on it. It weighed a ton. So unfortunately, he had to release it. But there you see a whale shark that must have been incredibly relieved to be able to swim away without this net. And ghost nets are one of the biggest problems and biggest amounts of the plastic pollution that we're finding in the oceans nowadays. Then we have climate change. What is happening with climate change and how is it affecting these large marine migratory species? And to answer that, I'm going to say I'm not 100% sure. And scientists working with this animal worldwide are not 100% sure. And that doubt is actually what is scariest. You see, we know that their distribution is beginning to change. We're seeing years like this one where we have the phenomenon of El Niño warming up the surface temperature waters and the surface water temperature, sorry. And we see how, because of that, the distributions are changing. They're not appearing in the season where we're used to seeing them. They're starting to appear in places where we're not used to seeing them. And how do you protect a species when you don't know where it's going to be in the world? We protect these huge ocean areas, hoping to protect the whale shark. And then if their distribution changes, they lose this protection of a marine protected area. Not only that, but their prey is also declining. Zooplankton, phytoplankton, and all the ocean systems are actually changing, which is going to affect these migratory species and so many more. Then, as I mentioned, the squalene oil from the liver of sharks is incredibly valuable due to the use that its use in day-to-day ingredients for makeup, for pain medicine. So if you have any kind of arthritic pain or joint pain, if you're an athlete, if you're taking any kind of this medicine or using makeup, please check that it does not say squalene oil or glucosamine, because we might actually be supporting the catch of whale sharks and other sharks without actually meaning to. So this is incredibly important to analyze. So what are we doing here in the Galapagos? I'll give that off to you.
So the investigation began with an idea of looking at a number of basic components. The first thing that we had to do was determine the population statistics and, for example, the ratio of male to female. In many of the populations around the world, you find that most of the animals are seen, in fact, about 70% are juvenile males. When we started to quantify this, we came up with the extraordinary fact that you can see very, very clearly there. 99.8% of all of our sightings, so virtually 100%, are actually female. It's very easy to tell the difference. The males have the claspers, the females don't have the claspers. So if you find that kind of skew in any population around the world, there must be something unusual happening, because you would expect normally for 50-50 to be the normal ratio between male and female. As I say, with most areas, it's juvenile males that we're seeing. But in Galapagos, we have this unique population of almost 100% male. Photo identification. Sorry, female, yes. Thank you, Sophie. Photo identification is probably one of the most important tools that we have. It's a very, very simple tool. All you need is a photograph of the left side, or sorry, of both sides, but we start with the left and then follow with the right. So with the side, the flank of the whale shark itself, and using the spot pattern, which is unique, just like your thumbprint, your fingerprint, we can determine whether that animal has been seen before. So we upload those photos to a world data bank, a global data bank, and then we know if it shows up, let's say in Thailand or Australia or somewhere off the coast of Africa, we'll get a report telling us the whale shark that you uploaded has now been spotted before or after the various different the places that you've seen it. And with this, citizen science plays a very important role. So if there are any divers or snorkelers out there who are listening, you can join in too, because citizen science is a very rapidly developing technique whereby anybody who's out there, you don't have to be particularly trained in any specific field, but you can submit photographs like this or photographs of other species. You can upload them to global databases, and this helps scientists around the world. Scientists cannot be everywhere all the time, and often we're very, very limited as to how much time we can spend in the field. So this kind of tool helps us. And here we have an example of an animal that was spotted in Galapagos and was also spotted in Revillagigedo of Mexico. Both times, this was not by scientists. These were divers that were in the water. They photographed the whale shark. They uploaded the photograph, and bingo, we got a connection between Mexico and Galapagos. And this kind of information is incredibly important because it tells us exactly where and how these large whale sharks are moving and where the connectivity lies. So that will tell you, for example, if there's a direct marine corridor between one area and another. Besides the photo ID, we're also using, we're using various other techniques to look and find out or answer this question. And this is perhaps the single most important question that we all have as whale shark scientists. are they pregnant when they come to the Galapagos Islands? Now, if they're mostly adults, they're mostly female, they don't appear to be feeding, as with this one in the photograph here, you can see that the mouth is firmly shut, and feeding is big, big mouth open wide, gulping sort of activity. So here they're not feeding, there are no males, and they're all adult females. So are they coming to Galapagos because they're pregnant, and are they giving birth in the Galapagos? And so we're using a number of techniques to try and investigate that. 2005, we got this staggering piece of information, sadly due to the fact that this was a pregnant female that was caught by fishermen. However, scientists were able to come in, carry out an autopsy, and some of the fetuses were actually still alive and kept alive in aquariums for up to 2 to 3 years after the fact. As you can see there at the bottom, 304 fetuses from a single female. Now that would indicate or suggest that they're one of the most prolific of sharks in the ocean. So they've got the biggest or the highest number of fetuses. Whether or not they give birth to 300 at once, whether they give birth to one for 300 days, we absolutely don't know. All of that is fascinating information that we'd love to find out. But the DNA showed that the offspring were all from a single male. So highly, highly productive, but obviously the encounters in the ocean are very, very infrequent, which is why they maximize these matings. Again, how they do that, what is the actual technique, or what is the process there, we don't absolutely know, but we guess that they almost certainly have a way of storing the sperm from the male and fertilizing possibly on demand when conditions are good, so opportunistic fertilization. And here you can see something which, again, really exciting. In 2018, the Galapagos Whale Shark Project, we've been collaborating with some scientists, some very brilliant scientists from Okinawa in Japan, and they have one of the very few freestanding ultrasound units. Now, you can imagine for a human to get an ultrasound, they go to the doctors or to the hospital, and then, of course, it's carried out in very controlled circumstances. Not so with a whale shark, because they're not going to cooperate perhaps in quite the same way. Whale sharks are simply swimming by. So you can imagine here, Dr. Rui Matsumoto has to swim as fast as he possibly can, catch up with the whale shark, and we don't really even know where the fetuses might be. So we've got an idea looking at the physiology of other sharks. So he has to do these quick sweeps with the ultrasound. And for the first time in 2018, we got a successful reading, and you can see there the egg follicles. So we didn't see fetuses, but we did see egg follicles, which is very exciting news indeed. However, it doesn't answer the question as to whether or not they're pregnant. It simply answers the question that they could be pregnant at some period coming to or leaving from the Galapagos. Another part of the work that we're doing is blood sampling and blood draw. And again, in 2018, our team was the first successful team to actually take blood samples in the wild, so in a free swimming environment. It's been done in aquariums. It's been done when they've been caught in nets before, for example, same with ultrasound. But neither of those two procedures has actually been done as the whale sharks just swim by. And here you can see a couple of the team members trying to get blood from the pelvic fin. You can take blood from pelvic fin, dorsal fin, and pectoral fin. We found the pectoral fin to be the easiest generally. So here you can see one of the divers approaching a whale shark. Now we have sharks that we like to call donors, blood donors, because they're swimming very slowly in the water. They're still swimming pretty quickly for a diver to catch up. And then you go in with your blood kit, which is 2 syringes. We have a long extension tube there. So the first blood that is drawn in will be contaminated with seawater. The scientific technique is you choose a white spot, very scientific indeed. This helps you just sort of keep track of where you are on the fin. And then you draw into a subsidiary syringe, and that will be blood contaminated with seawater. So that syringe, once it's full, then will have pure blood at the very end. So you close a small stopcock. As you can see, no blood came out of the first white spot. So you try the white spot next to it. And on this particular occasion, keeping pressure on the syringe, you'll see in just a moment there, all of a sudden, the blood flows very rapidly. Here it comes right now into the first syringe. Fill the first syringe with contaminated blood. And then after that, close the stopcock. And then you can fill another syringe, the primary syringe, with pure blood. And that blood you then take back on board. It has an anticoagulant in it. So we get back on board immediately. Then we process the blood to separate it out into plasma, whole blood, and we can do different, or red blood cells, and we can do different types of analysis using those blood samples. But blood gives you so many answers to so many questions. It tells you about baseline health. It tells you about whether or not it's an animal which is healthy, which is not so healthy, whether it might have any illnesses. As you can see, the whale shark felt absolutely nothing there, didn't even feel it. This is a shark that we've already tagged. So another thing we're looking at is lactic acid to see whether the animal is stressed. And every single sample that we see shows very clearly that these procedures are not actually stressing the animal, which is very important to us because we don't want to cause any harm to any of the species, the individuals, or the species that we're working with. So blood is very, very important because it answers a whole series of questions. And the blood chemistry, the hormones, might even give us an answer as to whether or not they're pregnant. Satellite tagging. Here you can see Sophie is approaching the whale shark that is swimming very gently just along the shelf of Darwin Arch. The tag itself is mounted on a clamp, which is just like an elaborate clothes peg, if you like. It just opens with a bit of pressure. It's got some little nylon pads, which helps keep it on. And off goes the tag, which is on the far side of the fin. You can't see the actual satellite tag itself, but that tag goes off with the shark. In the meantime, we've got another diver who's carrying out photo ID. So the diver had already photographed the right side, goes over to photograph the left side. As you can imagine, all of these procedures are going on at once, and the whole thing takes about 30 to maybe 60 seconds. So it's not like an inpatient goes in and you have your time to do all of this. The whale shark swims by and is thoroughly scienced by the time it leaves the area. So the satellite tag gives us a huge amount of information and sends up transmissions to the Argos satellites which are passing by. And then, of course, we have not only the horizontal position, but we have dive information as well. So we know where it's diving, how deep it's going, the temperature of the water down there. And of course, as you can see in this graphic, over the years, we've built up a very clear picture of how they're traveling in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, what the connectivity is between mainland, between island areas, such as the Galapagos, Cocos Islands, the coastal area of Mexico, and so on and so forth. So all of this information brought together begins to give us a better idea or a better understanding, not only of their natural history, but which areas might be key hotspots which are necessary to protect. And that is how you can then proceed to make management policy and legislation, which will then later on be used to create marine protected areas. So all of this information is put together, and that helps understand where, why, and how the whale sharks are moving and what they're doing. So it's like a mystery that you're trying to solve just one little piece at a time.
Wow, Jonathan, that is absolutely incredible. I do have a couple of questions for you here. The first being, how much planning, training, communicating does it take to facilitate a whale shark blood draw and tagging and wildlife ID all at the same time?
Well, the planning, a lot of people say, gosh, you have a fantastic lifestyle. Your job is amazing. I want to do exactly that. But it's about a year of planning for maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks in the field. So the exciting parts are very, very exciting, but there's an enormous amount of planning. You have fundraising, you're creating awareness. You have what we're doing now, for example, we're talking about the project. We're trying to spread the word a little bit about the oceans, not just this species, but about others as well. So an enormous amount of planning goes into that. The tags we have to order 3 to 4 months beforehand because they're custom programmed specifically for us. And then we have to get those tags. And then Sofía, she very nicely puts that she's a field assistant there, but actually she's the main data analyst of all of this information which comes in. So she does all of the programming. And you can explain a little bit more about the satellite tag programming, perhaps.
Yeah, so it depends on what we want to look at year after year. We will program them to look at certain profiles, like the time series of the profiles of them diving, the temperature, how long it stayed at certain depths, how long it stayed at certain temperatures. So we're looking at all these components to have a very clear image to say, okay, these are the ocean areas that are most important for the species. This is how we want to protect them. And so after the expedition, we're finally done. It's been an amazing 2 weeks, hopefully successful 2 weeks. Then it's actually grabbing all that data and looking at these numbers and saying, okay, first, remember that all these numbers that we see on the screen are whale sharks, makes it more exciting, and then actually process these and turn them into actual information. And we'll show you right now what this information, once it's processed, can actually do. So that leads me to the next part. And it is, why does all of this matter? So we've been talking about whale sharks for a while now, and my dad mentioned how they're endangered. And so we know that they have this intrinsic right to live, and that should be important enough. However, the species is also incredibly important to ocean health. How so? There's this beautiful, beautiful system called blue carbon, and that is the carbon that the ocean can sequester from the atmosphere and take it in and help mitigate the impacts of climate change. Just like a forest, a tropical rainforest would do, the trees sequester the carbon, the same ability exists in the ocean, and it takes the carbon down in to the ocean. How do whale sharks play a role in this? Well, you see, it's the phytoplankton, these plant-like animals that take the carbon out of the atmosphere and take it into the ocean. And who eats the phytoplankton? It's the zooplankton. So the carbon starts moving down the chain. And then who eats the zooplankton? Here comes the whale shark. So the whale shark starts eating the zooplankton, takes all that carbon as well. And then what does a whale shark do? The whale shark then defecates. And when this happens, it first of all, it turns it into organic material, which sinks to the bottom of the ocean, taking this carbon out of the atmosphere for centuries. But not only that, you see whale sharks travel huge distances, both vertically and horizontally. And as they do, they're taking nutrients across the world's oceans. And then when they defecate, they actually sprout life. So this brings in nutrients that creates new phytoplankton, and this creates more ability for the ocean to sequester more carbon, and it brings life to ocean areas that wouldn't have life otherwise. And not only that, but phytoplankton produces most of the oxygen that we breathe. So every time you take that deeper breath of air, remember to thank a whale shark. And then, last but not least, their beautiful size. The bigger you are, the more carbon you store in your body. So with a whale shark that can reach 14, 15, 16, up to 18 meters long, can you imagine how much carbon that whale shark has stored? So when this whale shark dies, it actually sequesters this carbon to the bottom of the ocean, turns into food for bottom dwellers, and actually keeps the carbon out of the atmospheres for centuries or maybe even forever.
Wow,
so actually helping us mitigate the effects of climate change.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I just wanted to mention that that was incredible, especially as you mentioned their large size. Today I learned that although a whale shark is very, very large, their esophagus is only about the size of a quarter. Wow, the more you know. Incredible.
Exactly. And so is their brain, which is surprising. You think these animals have like huge organs, and then you have this like incredible 14-meter animal, and its brain is actually smaller than the size of my palm. So yeah, that's always one of the interesting things when people ask us, are they intelligent creatures? Well, they do sometimes interact and show a little bit of curiosity, but you never really know how much is going on behind kind of like that little eye that's just kind of staring at you. So yeah. But in any case, besides their importance ecologically and how they're actually helping mitigate the effects of climate change, they're also incredibly important for economic reasons. You see, they support the livelihoods of so many people that live in coastal areas where there are whale shark sightings. You see, people will travel to see these animals and encounter them for 30 seconds to a minute. And by doing so, they not only spend money in the liveaboard, they also spend money on the food, on the souvenirs, they spend money in the town. And this is so important. A whale shark in its lifetime, depends on where it is in the world, can produce up to about $2 million, versus a single whale shark fin is sold in the black market for around $20,000. So whale shark is worth a lot more life than it is dead. And then not only that, but whale sharks serve as ocean ambassadors. You see, because they are charismatic animals, maybe more so charismatic than a sea slug, for example, it is easier, relatively easier, to protect a whale shark than it may be to protect a sea slug. And by doing so, you're protecting huge ocean areas that this animal uses. And when you do so, you're protecting other animals that use these same ocean areas, and you're protecting other endangered species such as sharks, rays, turtles, whales, important ecosystems like coral reefs. So that is how it is an ocean ambassador. It's even protecting commercially interested species like tuna. So when you protect the whale shark, you're actually protecting the oceans. For the Galapagos Whale Shark Project, we believe that the work with the community is incredibly important. We cannot expect long-term conservation if we don't link up with the community. For that reason, we started working with the dive guides and the naturalist guides who are submitting IDs, the tourists that come to the islands, but we're also working with a group of fishermen, and this has been an amazing collaboration. You see, since a couple of years ago, we now head out on our expeditions with a group of fishermen on their refurbished fishing boats, and they actually help us in our research. They're there, they know where the whale sharks are found, they know how the ocean works, so they've given us a lot of knowledge, and it's also nice to have these exchange. First, they didn't really understand our study. They would take us to these places, but wouldn't fully know what the work was about. And then as the days went on and they would see our excitement of finding a whale shark, taking a blood draw, they were also just as excited. We would come back from the dive and they're like, did you see one? Did you get it? You're like, yes. They would be just as excited as we were. Not only that, but interestingly enough, because some of these fishermen in their past used to be shark fishermen, they actually knew things like where to draw blood from a whale shark's fin from. And it's incredible to hear from their past how that has led them to actually help in conservation. And hopefully we can bring more fishermen into conservation and give them an alternative work. Besides that, we're also working a lot with education, especially young generations of local children on the islands. We have a club for girls from 8 to 12 years old called the Chicas con Agallas, or the Gills Club, where we're empowering young girls to become female scientists and go and feel like the ocean is part of their home and something they want to protect. So that's something we're doing. We're also working with the local eco clubs here in the islands. We give talks about whale sharks, prepare games. So it's been really exciting. And then also what I was mentioning a second ago, our data needs to be more than just data that we go out and collect out of intrinsic curiosity. That's all fun and it's amazing to find out so much more about the species we don't know about. How can we use this data properly? And this is what it's all about. You see, in 2022, our government used this data and data collected by our other collaborating scientists and partners and incredible scientists from the region, from Migramar, the Charles Darwin Foundation, the San Francisco University. All of this data put together actually showed us that certain areas in the Eastern Tropical Pacific serve as marine corridors for so many of these species, including the whale shark. We had a whale shark navigate from Darwin Island, from Ecuador, up to Cocos Island in Costa Rica, right in this marine corridor you see here. And that is what the government then said, we need to protect it, and created the Brotherhood Sisterhood Marine Reserve. So huge success story, and this is what it's all about. Let's protect the world's oceans, protect these endangered species, and hopefully protect our planet. What is going on with the project now? We have found a new whale shark constellation. We knew that the whale sharks that we see yearly, seasonally, were up in Darwin and Wolf, the furthest northern islands of the archipelago, and they were there seasonally between June and November. However, we would receive sporadic sightings during the other season, so we decided to check it out, and it seems like they were not as sporadic as we thought. There are whale sharks during the warm season between January to May being found in the southern islands. And now we're looking for these and seeing how much we can find out about them. Are they the same? Are they different ones? Will they follow different routes since they're moving during different times of the year? But how do you find whale sharks when you don't know where they're going to be? We can't do it the same as Darwin, where we know we're going to find them. So we drop in with the scuba tanks and there they are. Here we need a different strategy. So we have a bird's eye view, maybe from a drone, a plane, or we're looking at different alternatives as to how we can sight whale sharks from the air and then have a team on a fisherman's boat waiting at sea that can jump in and with a single breath of air, dive down and tag the whale shark, check if it's a male or a female, take a photo ID and do everything we do on scuba, but now do it with free diving, single breath of air. So that's the new challenge we're facing. And so far we've had 2 successful seasons, so we'll see what that brings. On to you, Pam.
Yeah, we were talking earlier on about the questions that we get, and I think this is one that is foremost on everyone's mind. What is the future of our oceans? Is it too late? Can we change that future? And I would like to answer very, very clearly that yes, we can change it. So Sophie's just talked a little bit about blue carbon, the mitigation efforts that we can take, the changes that we have to make in order to ensure that we do have healthy oceans for the future. Every single species that exists today on the planet had its origins in the oceans, where the land, the terrestrial environment is tied so closely to the oceanic environment. The future of the human species is tied absolutely to the future of the oceans. It isn't too late. We can change what we're doing. We can reverse some of those processes. The oceans are a very robust ecosystem. And if they're properly managed, if we can change fisheries to become sustainable, in other words, control the industrial fishing, which is going on right now, which is not sustainable, control the pollution in the ocean, and a whole number of factors, we can look towards the future and a future with healthy oceans. And that is the only way that this planet is going to have a future and thrive, and us, of course, as a species. So I think that there's a very positive outlook, but we do need to change how we live, our consumer habits, the pollution that's going on in the oceans, and a number of factors. So yes, there's hope for the oceans for the future, but we have to do it, and we have to do it now.
That's incredible. As you talk about making more sustainable choices and being more aware of where we're spending our money, Marlo and Deb from the chat want to know where we can look into medications and makeup and other products that don't have fish or whale oil in them.
So this is actually really good. Sorry, that is a really good question. And there are incredible online sources. I'm happy to share them next on the chat or with you, Gabby, so you can share them with everyone that was here tonight. You can see there's a list where you can actually Google certain makeups or certain medicine, and it will tell you if it's in a positive list or a negative list or neutral. So it's the people that have already completely banned and removed the use of shark oil in their products. And then there are those that have not replied and those that have refused. So you can actually check out where your product stands and make a decision based on that, which I think is really important for all of us to be doing. And just really good news, the UK about a month ago fully banned the use of shark oil in any products in their market. So hopefully a lot of other countries follow the same example as well.
You know, this is something which a lot of people are very quick to point the finger and say, well, it's their fault. But in fact, it's not. It's ours collectively. Every single nation on Earth has a role to play. And you can go down to your local supermarket, your local chemists, whether it's in London, New York, Paris, Peking, it doesn't matter. If you look at the ingredients of the containers, it must be declared. So squalene oil coming from rays and from sharks is one of the obvious ones. Some of them actually very, very clearly say shark oil. And this is like some kind of marketing strategy. So you can go in, you can look and see whether or not they contain elements, materials, ingredients which could be harmful for the environment. I know, for example, that for a long time, Chanel was using squalene oil in their famous red lipstick, and they are one of the companies that has now moved away from that. So a lot of companies today are very much aware that the consumer is looking to see whether or not those products are still being used, in medicines or day-to-day products on the shelves.
That's incredible. I'm so glad to hear that there's more corporate responsibility and a push from society to get these corporations on the same page as us and protecting our oceans and the wildlife that live within. Yes, absolutely. If Sophia, whenever you decide to share with me that list, I'd be happy to share it with our participants tonight and actually see if maybe we can get it posted on MOD's socials. That way, everybody who follows the museum can get this incredible information. We did have another question in the chat. They want to know if there is any information about the amount or size of plastics found in whale sharks. Is there any, are we ever able to open them up and look?
You see, we would love to be able to open up more whale sharks that are stranded, mainly to see this, like what is actually causing a lot of strandings, especially those that haven't been brought out by fishermen. Unfortunately, scientists aren't contacted at the moment of stranding, so we haven't been able to look at this enough. However, we have had the report of the plastic straw. I know that once they did open it up and there was plenty of microplastics in the gut of whale sharks. However, the way we are looking at doing the analysis is using the blood samples that we're taking. With that, you can actually analyze, if you put them in a little glass vial rather than a plastic vial, we are then able to look at certain chemicals found in the blood that directly link us to plastics, because plastics are made up of so many different chemicals. So that is one of the hopes that we have with the blood samples that we're taking, to look at how big the problematic is with whale sharks in the Eastern Tropical Pacific, and then do so worldwide as well.
Yeah, I think maybe to take that also one step further, I think it would be a fair statement to say that every single filter feeder in the oceans today has plastic ingested. The question is, how much plastic can they ingest? Are they able to, in some form or manner, pass the plastic through? As you said, the esophagus is very, very small, so they're not going to be ingesting large pieces of plastic. It's going to be the microplastics or the smaller pieces of plastic, and it is possible that to a certain extent those are able to travel through the digestive system of whale sharks and other filter feeders. So we're hopeful that a lot of whale sharks or filter feeders will actually be able to get rid of them as they go. But the toxicity buildup in all of these species is an unknown, and I think further research is going to indicate that this is affecting, as I say, every single species. And then you've got to look at it through the food chain, because as the filter feeders are then perhaps eaten by the predators, and those predators are eaten by the apex predators, then it's going to affect even humans. So if you analyze today tuna, you go to your local supermarket, you do analysis of tuna, you'll discover that it probably has heavy metals, cadmium, mercury, of course, radioactive materials from the Fukushima plant because of the disaster with the tsunami. So these apex predators are concentrating them, and we eat the fish. So this is a very good reason right now. So if anyone out there is eating shark, and I know it's in the country where I live, in Costa Rica, I was having a conversation just last week with a taxi driver, and he said, "Oh, I love shark. I eat it at least twice a week. That's why my uncle lived to 120 years old." I said, "Well, it's actually associated with a lot of health problems, including things like Alzheimer's. So we need to readjust, reevaluate the damage we're doing to ourselves through some things that we're not even aware of, such as the accumulation of toxic materials through the food chain."
Wow, that's just fascinating, and I wonder that if enough research and if enough resources were put towards this, if we could tag enough whale sharks to find out if they are purposefully navigating away from these large trash gyres in the ocean. Just something that popped up in my mind. I mean, that would just be astounding. Perfect. So then I actually had a question for both of you myself, one of which being, if the whale shark is so large, why is his brain and the esophagus just so small? I mean, it's absolutely fascinating that a creature that can be several meters long is able to live solely off of filter feeding.
I don't know, maybe my background in geology, because I studied sciences and was fascinated by dinosaurs. As you probably know, many dinosaurs, many of the ancient beings or creatures on the planet had a fairly small brain. It doesn't mean that they're not intelligent. It just means that they didn't need a massive brain for perhaps data processing, because perhaps they didn't have a high level of threats, or that feeding techniques were fairly basic or easy, or there wasn't a lot of competition, back when they were roaming the earth. What is fascinating about the whale shark is that it is a living dinosaur. So it's been roaming our oceans for probably 70 or 80 million years. Sharks, the entire group of sharks, have been around perhaps for over 200 million years. So they're definitely associated with a bygone era, the era of dinosaurs. So it's possibly a throwback, a physiological throwback. They simply didn't need to have a bigger brain. Why develop a sense or organs or expend energy on something that you're not using and don't require? So why do certain birds lose the ability to fly? Because they simply don't need to. So my answer in that one would be, they don't need to have a bigger brain until now, unfortunately, when they do need to strategize and find their way past these new challenges that they're being faced with as a result of our activities.
Great answer. Absolutely great answer. My next question is that if there are any young people watching this presentation, anybody who's on their pathway to maybe becoming a marine biologist, is there any sort of advice that either of you would give them, or do you have anything from your journey that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. I think that if marine biology is your passion, or science, or the oceans, and you know you want to work in the oceans, you definitely can. It's a passion job, but if that's what you love doing, do it. And the way I found that was like best way to get fully into it was immersing myself in the world ocean. Like learn how to scuba dive, go and learn how to free dive, volunteer at a research station, and spend all this time changing from project to project, and that's fine. You'll learn what you most love, all the skill sets you need to have, because as a marine biologist, it is an extremely romanticized job, as my dad was mentioning earlier, and it's not about spending every single day on the beach or swimming in the ocean. Like I'd love it to be that. However, no, to protect the oceans, we need to do so much more, and the more varied skills you have, the better you're going to do in this job. You need to learn how to code and do statistical analysis, and how to work in communications and digital, work as well, because we're working with photographs and videos, and how do we get the message out there. So that as well is really important. If you want to protect the oceans, you don't necessarily have to be solely a marine biologist. You can be a communicator, you can be a statistician, you can be a diver. Like there are so many ways to get involved in ocean conservation. I think it's just about trying everything out a little bit and then just going for it. If it's what you love, there will be a way.
Yeah, I think what I've always thought, and this is the advice that I gave my children, and a lot of people say, well, your daughter works with you on the project, but that actually happened as a result of a series of happenings. It was never really planned, and Sophie happened to be in the Galapagos, and she was working in some way in that field, looking at marine invasive species as a result of plastic products in the ocean. And every trip that we do, every expedition that goes out, we try and take local scientists, at least one local scientist, to help with training of local talent as well, so that some of the local students, whether they're undergrads, grads, doing masters or PhD, can actually come out and experience that with us. The person that was supposed to be joining us unfortunately couldn't due to a family situation, and looking around thinking, well, okay, what do we do? It would be terrible if we headed out on the expedition with an available space and we didn't take somebody. And it was actually Alex, the lead scientist at the time. He said, well, what about Sophie? She's working here in Galapagos right now, and she's a local Galapagos resident. So that was how she ended out there. But I think if you have a passion for the oceans, if you have a dream, and there's any young person watching this right now, I would say follow that dream. It won't necessarily always be easy, but if you're passionate about something, then that's what you should do.
That is absolutely incredible advice from the both of you. I mean, what amazing words you've shared with us tonight. Truly inspiring, especially for me as an ocean lover who has always dreamed of doing something like this. Just really incredible. Finally, my last question is that if you were to receive a blank check or $1 million check tomorrow, and you could put it towards any sort of aspect of your research, what would you use it on?
Wow. Well, yeah, if we won the lottery tomorrow or received the blank check, as you say, I know that we would try to invest more time in the ocean. One of the biggest limiting factors right now is how much time we can actually spend carrying out the various different elements of the work that we do. So we do need to carry out more tagging. Sophie mentioned the Southern aggregation. We know of other aggregations that form at certain times of the year, so we'd like to begin to study them. We literally are we have just a few days when we have the ultrasound team with us, so we would like to duplicate at least the number of expeditions that we do so that we could bring them down. Your data sampling size has to be as big as possible. So if you're only sampling, let's say 10 whale sharks in a year, your data sample size is very, very small. If we can push that up to 50, the chances of success go up exponentially. So I think what we would do first and foremost is invest much more time carrying out the work in the field that would hopefully bring us the results and the data that we need to implement the legislation and the management policies that would help to protect the oceans in the future.
I definitely agree with that, and also would like to add, like, it's our dream also to be able to, I mean, we also had to split ourselves in like 10 different people to manage everything we want to do with the project, honestly, since it is a small team. But we also want to be working in workshops. Like, there's so much going on right now in mainland Ecuador. How about we start working with the fishermen sector there as well, and the dive agencies there as well? And how do we get that to connect with what we're doing here in the Galapagos? And how can we then, as my dad mentioned, start working in the other aggregations that we're talking about, and implement more of the education side of things? Like, there's so many different components to the project that there is so much that we could do if we had this blank check or would win the lottery. There's definitely a lot more work to do in the future, for sure.
Incredible. I mean, this has just been such an amazing talk from the both of you. I really want to thank you both for the time that you've spent here with us tonight. I just received a really lovely message that we have a young viewer who is very moved by your words and is excited for a future in marine biology and ocean conservation, which is exactly what we aim to accomplish here. So just really thrilling.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. I know that this will be online, so you can share it with friends and other interested parties. Thank you very much, Gavi, and to the museum for inviting us. It's been wonderful, and we'd love to return.
Absolutely, and we would be honored to have you both back. Just like how Jonathan said, we are continuing our amazing Save Our Seas speaker series. This video will be posted to YouTube in the following days, so be sure to check it out there and share it with all of your friends and your family. Please feel free to join us next time for The Secret Lives of Silky Sharks, which will be next week, September 7th from 6 to 7 p.m. You can register at mods.org/STEM Learning Series. And of course, feel free to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, as we are always posting our Save Our Seas speakers and the links to join our talks. So with that being said, thank you so much, Sofía and Jonathan. Happy International Whale Shark Day to everybody. And thank you all for joining us for another captivating installment of our Save Our Seas Distinguished Speakers series. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Bye-bye.